Hey friends, welcome to the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast episode 15. We are Brockless no more. That's right, Brock is back from sabbatical, if you can call it that. He was off only a month, got interrupted a lot, but he's back, and we talk about what he learned about himself, his identity in Christ, and how we do what we do without letting it be who we are. Later, we talk about success in youth ministry in a time when it seems like the wins are hard to find. How do we know it's not all in vain? The answer may surprise you. So, without further delay, it's episode 15 of the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast, so roll down the windows and let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast podcast. My name is Steve, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts, plural today. Hey, Shannon Dunn.
Hey.
And who is this guy joining us today? He looks familiar. I can't quite place the face. Do you remember his name?
Barely.
I try not to look in the mirror. You know, I don't know what I look like, but I have a beard all of a sudden.
You do. Yeah. You grew a beard. Yeah. Welcome back, Brock Morgan. It's good to have you back.
I've missed you guys.
We missed you too.
I really haven't. We haven't had like a conversation since last year.
We haven't been in a room together in person or online since November. So,
crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Brock, I was thinking about it because Shannon and I were calling our episodes Brockless. And, you know, one of the most popular podcasts in the world is Smartless. So really, without you here, it was kind of our version of Smartless.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. We're Brockless and probably Smartless, too.
I listened to every episode, and you guys were not Smartless at all. I thought you were great.
Steve, I thought you were going to say without Brock, we were also one of the best podcasts in the world. That's what you're referencing.
That could be. Yeah, I was trying to be deferential just to welcome him back. But we were promised gifts, Brock, and I haven't received a single thing from you. Huh. So what's the deal?
Well, they're in the mail.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Just
wow.
Yeah. Just like your salary for the podcast, Brock. It's in the mail too.
Oh, good.
We are part of the Download Youth Ministry Podcast Network. And if you haven't tried the new Sidekick app, you need to check it out. It is like it's like everything you could need in a youth room to run your program. Slides, embedded videos, foam polls. It's great. Try it out. It's awesome. Go to downloadyouthministry.com and sign up and buy it today. So, guys, Brock is back from sabbatical.
Yes.
Which, if you call it that, I mean, it was like a month.
Yeah, so it's not a real sabbatical.
Where were you? What'd you do?
Well,
blow us off.
A couple of things. Well, I'll tell you where I went. I went to San Diego, so about an hour and a half south of me. And then I went to London. And then I went to Texas. And then the rest of the time I was home. And so, but I
Youth Ministry Sherpa, continent to continent. That's good.
I refused to call it a sabbatical because a sabbatical typically is at least 3 months. And the church gave me 4 weeks ish, and called it a sabbatical. And I went to my boss and I was like, I don't like you calling this a sabbatical, because then when I actually want a real sabbatical, you'll be like, you already had a sabbatical.
Yeah.
I was like, let's call it a mini sabbatical. Can we do that?
Yeah.
But 4 weeks is nice.
What prompted it?
I don't, we planted a church. It's, everything's new and growing. Hundreds of brand new Christians. Started our youth group with nothing. and it's bursting at the seams. It's been all consuming, not a lot of days off. And my boss took one like a month off, went to Ireland, and then I think he felt guilty and was like, you should do that too. So I wasn't going to refuse.
Okay.
So yeah, we just here's what was difficult is you guys know I have struggled with terrible back pain. Mm-hmm. And it is almost March, and my left leg has been pins and needles like asleep since mid-December.
Ooh.
And I've had terrible, not quite debilitating, but almost back pain, where sitting down is torture, standing up really sucks, laying down is a bit better. And so I went into my sabbatical at the peak of back pain, and I just refused to let that be the theme of my time away. So I took the family to the first week. I kind of divided it up. First week, a little family getaway. We went and stayed at Tick Long's house in San Diego. And
Brock, I just have to say, I think we might have lost all of our under 40 listeners with your back pain problems.
I know.
But please keep going.
I know.
I got this goiter. I don't know what's going on here.
Just think of like
these young youth pastors. They don't understand
when you twist your ankle playing basketball with the middle school kids.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
You're terrible.
It's not like that. I've been there. It's not like that.
Okay, tell us about San Diego.
So we went to San Diego. We went to SeaWorld.
Yeah.
I haven't been there for 20, 30 years. I actually thought they had closed down. Anyway.
I have a season pass. So.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for the invite.
They've actually got rides now.
Mm-hmm.
Like rides. Anyway, we did that. We were there for about 5 days. And then I went to London for 5 days. Just hung out at if you guys have heard of Alpha, the church that launched Alpha, Nicky Gumbel, Tim Hughes is a worship leader. Those people came out of there. They started the Alpha. You're doing what?
We're doing Alpha now.
Okay, great. So I went to the Alpha Church and just hung out with their youth ministry team, and went to all their services. It's my favorite church in the world. And then I went to Texas and spoke at a retreat. I know.
Sabbatical?
I know.
You hung out with a youth team in London. You spoke at a retreat.
Yeah, I know. The point was to do what I wanted to do, guys.
Okay.
All right.
But here's some things I learned. Can I tell you some things I learned? Because I immediately came back and did a youth retreat. So on my sabbatical, I was working on the youth retreat. So that's bad planning. I'm in back pain, so I'm dealing with that. But then I got called into work 2 different times. So I never unplugged fully. One was a bunch of drama that I had to go and meet with kids and their parents for. I literally had to ask about 5 kids to not come to youth group for a couple of weeks. That was hard, and I actually felt angry that I was having to deal with it. And then I got called into because a kid in our youth group got in a fight with his dad, and cops were called. And so I got called onto the scene and had to bring the kid home to stay with us. So it's like
you haven't described a sabbatical at all.
No.
Honestly. I've had 2 of them, and this is not what it's supposed to be.
No. So I learned that I cannot. So I work with my wife. My wife works at church. I can't do a sabbatical with her still going to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
I just can't. You're just not unplugging.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult as well. Here's the thing. Let me give you a silver lining, because this is sounding like I'm complaining. And I'm not complaining. I spent time fasting and praying and reading scripture and journaling. I did it hours every day. And I'm not joking. I felt so connected with God in such a beautiful, he was just with me through all the difficult. And there was a lot of difficult, unexpected stuff. And I just sensed his presence the whole time. And so when I came back to our youth group and taught at our winter retreat, I was so on fire. And God really did an amazing thing in our group. But I didn't really have a sabbatical.
You said something I want to ask a question about. You said you got to do what you wanted to do. And a lot of what you wanted to do included some youth ministry type things. You spoke at a camp or a retreat, you said something in Texas, and you hung out with the youth group in London. And those were on the list of what you wanted to do. So I was thinking, you were talking about identity in youth ministry, as someone in youth ministry. So did you learn anything about how you feel about your identity in youth ministry and how it's related in that time?
That's a good question. I didn't hang out with the youth group. I just hung out with a couple youth pastors.
Okay.
And they really poured into me. So it wasn't Brock can't let go of youth ministry.
You said you could do anything for a month.
Well,
and you didn't.
I couldn't do anything without being interrupted. And before the sabbatical was planned, I was booked at the speaking thing. So the last week of my sabbatical, I went and did that. And it was just I wouldn't have ever planned that.
Got it.
So it is, I don't know. As far as identity, I'm sure I have significant issues as a youth worker, intertwined in my identity. I was never a youth pastor who said, I'm going to do this for a season and then eventually move on to something else. When I was 19 years old and God called me into youth work, I intended to retire someday as a youth pastor. And my heroes were old youth workers. And I wanted to emulate them. And so I'm sure that my identity is screwed up.
Well, maybe all three of us. I mean, we'll let Steve answer for himself, but I'm like, I have 3 children. My youngest is about to turn 1, and the ministry schedule is so hard. But I, like you, was like 19 and decided to get a degree in youth ministry. So it's like, what else am I ever going to do with my entire life? Like, that's what my degree is in. That's what my master's degree is in. And so I've been highly considering, I hope no one I work with listens to this. Anyways,
no one we work with listens.
I don't think they do, honestly. I have been considering what a career change would look like. And, going into a teaching schedule where I have the summers off with my kids, or these are the things. And I'll get like really far down the road of like being like, yes, this is the next steps for Shannon as a mom. And I can still hang out with students, and I can, still minister that way. And I'll get really far into it. And then I'll kind of have a panic attack about, no, I love youth ministry. Like, what am I going to be doing something I don't love, that I'm not like deeply passionate about, and that I've spent my life studying? Like, what am I doing? And I'll sort of like flail, about that. And so it's just real interesting.
I have found, and Steve, you're actually ahead of, I don't know about year-wise, but you're ahead of me age-wise. I have found as I've gotten older, my role at youth group has changed a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of the father.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Like
yeah.
I'm dad at youth group.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so my role has changed, and I also view our leaders not so much as peers. I also feel like I'm their dad also, and we
Little
have
bit.
some
Yeah.
leaders that are my age.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm dad in that role too. And so I've had to
Mm-hmm.
change my
Mm-hmm.
understanding of my role has changed. And if it hadn't, I would have been even more frustrated in my role.
Mm-hmm.
And my role in parent ministry
Mm-hmm.
has significantly changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that aspect. If I wasn't running parent trainings, I would feel like unfulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't speaking into youth workers' lives, I feel like I would feel unfulfilled. And God opening doors to travel and speak and train
Mm-hmm.
youth workers and speak to kids around the country and do parent things, that's helped me. But if I were in just a youth pastor role at a church, I would feel frustrated. And I can give you a very recent example of that, but I'd love to hear how Steve has hung on.
Well, the question of how identity is wrapped up in being a youth pastor is it's a painful self-discovery, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I've been wrestling that for the past 10 plus years. I became a youth pastor at 35, a choice that I pursued from the time I was 27 to the age of 35. So like you, Brock and Shannon, I was in it for life. I knew what I was doing. But now I'm at the back end of that and thinking, what's next? And that's a whole subject. But one of the things that I did to keep sane in my changing role was to start a podcast.
Yeah.
Just to be able to speak and meet other youth pastors and youth workers and kind of engage in a larger community around the country was super important to me. But I'm
broadening your audience. I do
Yeah.
think that's a healthy
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
As you
Not-
get older,
not
you
as a
have to
platform,
broaden.
but just the experiences and the people that you rub shoulders with. It definitely
Yes.
changes. So,
Well, I think it can be for younger youth workers, right? When you suddenly, if say your youth group grows and your role changes there from like leading a small group and playing
Right.
dodgeball and being in to now my role has to be less hands-on with the students and more hands-on with the volunteers. Even that, the identity in that shift can be really hard.
Absolutely.
Right? I remember that, like being like,
Yes.
no, I'm
Yeah.
playing with students. Like I'm going to play dodgeball. I'm going to
Yeah.
do those things. I'm not going to just lead volunteers or lead leaders. So there's each step of the way as you either grow in your age or grow in your ministry or grow, all those things, I think could be hard, especially if no one's shared with you, like this is going to feel challenging.
Sure. I mean, you become a leader of leaders over time, and eventually you become a parent of leaders.
Yeah.
A lot of my youth leaders are former students.
Yeah.
I would say what has helped me, and I do think that I probably should get counseling around this idea of my identity being wrapped up into my calling. But I would say what has helped me significantly is I've probably read Brennan Manning's book, Abba's Child, I'm going to guess 25 times. And just my identity being rooted in the fact that I am God's kid, that I'm the beloved in that sense. He's proud of me. Being rooted in that book has been so profound in at least lifting my head away from what I do being who I am.
Mm-hmm. The problem with having your identity wrapped up in being a youth pastor is, in addition to just the theological problems with that and thinking that you're the savior, is because your role is going to change. You're going to get you're going to get lowered. You're going to get decimated.
Yeah.
I remember the first awakening I had of that was when I hired my first additional staff person, and he was a young man, very, very handsome, and the kids all thought he was the coolest thing. And I remember some kids came up to me. They brought a friend to youth group, and they came up and they said, "Hey, this is Pastor Steve. He's the old guy, and this is Patrick. He's the cool guy." And you gotta lean into that. Like, that's, at first you're like, "Oh, well, that kind of sucks. I used to be the cool guy."
Yeah.
But who needs to be the cool guy? I'd rather be the wise guy, or the wiser guy who stayed, and had generational impact, than the cool guy. So you have to kind of shift your whole focus to what it's about. You mentioned Brennan Manning. I go to Eugene Peterson a lot because he talks to pastors about what it means to be a pastor, just from the sense of shepherding and loving people, as opposed to like being successful and running programs and stuff. And so I have to go there to remind myself of like the heart of what I do is helpful for me. So
my go-to when I get caught up in this is just, I do monthly spiritual direction. And so I had like my whole first year almost of doing spiritual direction. It was all about work. And I was like, why am I connecting my, ministry job in my spiritual life? Why? Like, I don't want to spend my whole time talking about work and spiritual direction, And so it took me like a whole year of intentionally like realizing that my spiritual life, my connection with God is not like based on what is happening, the ups and downs at work, just like really working through that. So
let me ask you guys this. If you became independently wealthy, and money was not a reason to, like, you could do whatever you want in the world and live anywhere, do anything, would you stay working as a youth pastor in a church, or stay working in a church?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
First, I would volunteer in a church, I think.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely would want to be a big part of hands in serving in the church. But it'd be like really nice to sometimes have some Sundays off, or like go on a long vacation, So like that, it's for me, it's really the scheduling of,
it's the grind.
It's the schedule.
Yeah.
It breaks me the most often. But
are you offering, Brock? Because if you've suddenly come into some cash and you just want to,
actually, maybe we should put that out on it. Let's put that out to our listeners.
Oh, yeah? That's a good question.
Do we have any listeners who just want to support the three of us?
Yeah.
Financially.
I think I would be with you, Shannon. I feel so committed to the local church that I would not disconnect from the local church. But I definitely wouldn't be planning games on Wednesday nights. I can tell you that.
Yeah, for sure.
I lead some games still. I get a joy out of that, I like it.
Oh man,
it's good.
Well, thanks, guys. I got to tell you, I have missed you, and I know you did fine without me, and of course you did. But it's good to be back with you.
Time for the next segment. Get to know your Sherpa. Shannon's got a question for us.
I do. I have a question for us today. I want to know what is currently in the trunk of your car.
All right, Steve, you go.
Are you laughing?
I have a pickup.
All right, it could be in the bed.
But I'll say what's underneath the back seat.
Tell us, Brock.
I have bungee cords and a jack and some tools. Yeah, it's very boring.
Wow, that is boring.
Man.
I have an umbrella because it's been raining in Southern California, which has been unusual like this. And mine's boring. I wish I had like something awesome, like drugs,
like a dead body,
like illegal drugs, a dead body.
A seventh grader who never went home after the lock-in and just been in your car the whole time, something like that. Mine's not super exciting either. I got my golf clubs back there. I put them in the other day because anytime the sun comes out now, I'm ready to go. Want to have it with me? Want to have them with me? I have got a change of clothes, my golf shoes, my golf bag, all my clubs. So
Yes,
You
I
guys.
when
love
the weather
that.
hits, I'm out of here. Yeah.
When I had a trunk, I used to do that too. I'd have a basketball in there and my tennis
Yep.
racket maybe and my golf clubs.
Shannon, is your husband in the trunk?
He's
A couple kids in there.
So I mean, yeah, I'm a mom, right? So I got a container full of snacks, the snack bin, okay,
Yeah.
in the back. But I just, I've got a blower, those things that you pump up an inflatable bounce house with in my trunk currently.
Okay.
I've got a double balloon pump in the back of my car currently.
This
let's
is
see,
all
definitely
connected to your
You're
role
a-
at church, man.
a bubble machine in the back. Actually,
Yes.
none of this is for church right now.
Oh, really?
You're
Bubble
a
machine.
mobile party. You're just a mobile
I got
party.
a portable speaker. I could throw a party anywhere.
Dude,
That's kind of how our trunk
come
always
on.
is. But like, I have my other youth pastor friend. He like opens up his trunk. He's like, "How many squirt guns do you need right now?"
Oh,
he's
that's
like-
great.
like-
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
All right. So if you need a party at your youth group this Sunday night, give Shannon a call.
Call me up.
1-800-PARTY TRUNK. All right.
That's awesome. Good work.
We'll go into segment 3. We're calling this one Scoreboard. And this is kind of a follow-up to the recent interview with Brad Griffin and some of the things that we've been thinking about in youth ministry world. Not necessarily new things, but just kind of a realization of how hard it is. So with the statistics of 40 to 50% of kids walking away from their faith after high school, the challenges of week in, week out youth ministry, all the difficulties of church life these past few years. What is success in youth ministry? What is it that marks that we're doing it well? Let me just premise this. So like this week in my ministry, I was just down in our youth room. I'm looking at the wall. We have senior pictures of every class on the wall. And I'm looking at the faces and realizing how many of these kids have wandered off. I found out about a certain student in our youth ministry who has an inappropriate website. I sat in with the 7th grade boys, small group this week, and they're terrible. They're not like, oh yeah, 7th grade boys, of course. No, this isn't like the 7th grade boys group that I remember. They were awful. They were awful. And so I'm thinking, where's the win coming? I know there's good stuff out there too, but it just feels like everything is stacked against us. And there's times where it just doesn't feel like we're winning. So what is success in youth ministry? Where do we put some points up on the scoreboard? And what does that look like in our current world for us?
These are really important questions. I used to answer this question. Success is when a youth group kid is 28 and their faith is informing their life.
Yeah.
Like the partner they choose, how they spend their money, their faith is informing how they raise their maybe kids, but I feel like that's too far away. But that used to be my goal is everything is about getting them to adulthood and being in love with Jesus.
So Brock, I agree with that. And I'm willing to even set that timeline to gauge success. I guess my wrestling is with the percentages. Like, is that the one kid that turned out that way out of the 25 that graduated that year? Or is it, how do you determine in your own heart, did I succeed with this class of students? What does that look like? Does that make sense?
I had a couple that, like for me in this group right now, success is getting them to question their faith. When I first got here, they were so not curious, and it was alarming to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I got to instigate doubt.
Okay.
And so now I have these kids asking questions, and we're actually getting deeper. Their faith is becoming more owned by them. But that was that was an immediate goal for me.
So you saw success in that moment as kind of changing the culture of the kids that you inherited as you started this youth ministry and improving the overall culture of your group. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted them to be question askers.
Yeah, sure.
I absolutely hate that I'm going to say this and reference this poem saying thing, but I've really always had, and maybe that's born out of being a part of a small youth group growing up, kind of leading a smaller youth group, but I've always just measured successes by like individuals, like a win, so the percentages has never been, it's just never been a part of the way I've thought, honestly. When you said that, I was like, oh, I don't know, I never thought that way. But I'm thinking about that poem where it's like, I don't know if it's Jesus or someone walking down the beach throwing in a starfish, and there's like thousands of them, and they're like, it matters to this one. I like literally hate that I'm referencing that, but it's so interesting.
Jesus was a star fisherman. It's a little known fact.
Do you know the poem I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I thought you were getting ready to quote Jesus Freak.
No, is there a quote in that too that this will work with? But anyway, I had one of those moments this week where I was like, oh, what we do matters. We had a student who's a year or two out of college just text me in the middle of the week and be like, are you home? Could I come by your house? And I just need somewhere to hang and like read, and like I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I was like, happened to be a day that like me, my husband, the whole family was home, but I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like our house is your house. Come on over. And I was like, that's one of my goals, is that they would always see us as a safe space, whether it's us as ministers or the church, because I believe so many of our students are going to walk away from their faith. But if I've given them the message that we as people who love Jesus, or the church is a safe space for them to come back to, even in the midst of questioning, walking away, having no faith at all, that to me is like a huge win, because I hope someday they'll know to circle back, or they'll be like, what am, so that for me.
That's so good, Shannon. We were just having a conversation this week, my girls director and myself, and she said the exact same thing. She met up with some girls, and one of them is pretty new here. We don't know her super well, and the things that she was revealing were troubling, but we only have a few months left with this kid. She's a senior, and so we had the same question, like what can we do for her? And that's what Leah said. I just want her to know, want her to have a good experience with church. Know this is a place where she can always come. She can always come to me. She's welcome here. Yeah. And then just, kind of leave her in the Holy Spirit's hands for the future. Because we can't make that big an impact over the next 3 months as one out of, however many girls.
Or maybe you will make the impact, but eventually they're going to leave your ministry. And so you can't hold their hands forever.
Right. Yeah.
We have a rule at our youth group, and it's simple. It's no one struggles alone. And so when kids go to a leader and ask for help, or confess they're struggling, for me, it's a big high five win. Like we have a culture where if I'm struggling with let's say an overwhelming temptation, or I'm struggling at home with my parents, or I'm feeling like a kid came to me Wednesday night and was like, I am like, Brock, I constantly feel lonely. It's this pit in my stomach. Even when I'm in a room full of people, I just feel all alone. For me, if our culture has that regularly happening, that's a win, man.
Yeah.
I agree. So it's not about percentages. It's about culture. It's about what we leave them with when they leave us, what their perspective is on the church, and knowing that the door's always open, right? It's reassuring. So therefore, our success is measured by our faithfulness and the atmosphere that we create, not by the results. Does that feel better?
I think so.
I think so too.
We just got to convince our bosses of that.
That's right.
Amen.
All right, Brock, what's keeping you going this week?
Oh, I would say this past Wednesday, a youth group, just watching the kids passionately worship and get prayed for. And then I jumped in to the 8th grade girls small group. And oh my gosh, it's so much better than the 8th grade boys small group.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. This small group,
obviously.
This small group has 28th grade girls in it and one leader.
Oh, good heavens.
So I'm like, I'm with you. I'm going with you.
Yeah,
And but oh my gosh, they're praying for each other, crying over each other. I just was like, oh, it was the best.
That's awesome.
Shannon?
Well, I was going to share the story I already shared about a student, texting midweek to come over. But another thing this week, this morning on my drive in to drop my kids at school and then go to work, I suffer for Christ and have to just follow the ocean along my drive. And there was this gorgeous, pink sky, which is weird. It wasn't sunrise time, but the sky was pink and the rays were coming through. And my 9-year-old sitting next to me said, "That's God's creation." And I was like, yes,
Oh, I love
just
it.
that moment. So
That's awesome.
it was really cool.
That's awesome. I got that text this week too, Shannon. One of my students from 2 years ago reached out and said, "Hey, you want to grab breakfast on Saturday? I'm back in town." So that's tomorrow. It's going to be great. And yeah, that's a big win, right? When you're the one that they seek out when they come back to visit, that's a win.
Yeah.
For sure.
Hey, let's talk about that percentage, okay? 2/3 of us have a student coming back to us.
Come on.
I'm sure Brock never has that happen. But,
It wasn't the 7th grade boys group. I will say that. That was not the thing that kept me going this week. Anyway, well, it's been great to have you back, Brock. Welcome back to the show. And I hope that you can at least get a little bit of remnant of your sabbatical over the next month or 2 or 3. Feel some energy and peace. Shannon, I hope you can get to work, that they clear the roads and all that stuff. And we'll be back soon with another episode of the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast. Great to be together.
Bye.